Hello folks, Guy here again. Welcome to my home on this very beautiful, sunny, and I want to emphasize sunny, winter day. It's the first time I've seen the sun in about 10 days to 2 weeks. Wow. The name of this video is called The Guy Scoffs At Tartarus. Now, for those of you who don't know what Tartarus means, well, first off, let me tell you what scoff means for those who may not know what it basically means to mock. So yes, I'm going to mock the very idea or the concept of Tartarus. And I changed my mind. I'm not going to define Tartarus right now. Instead, I'm just going to kind of explain it in this video, instead of just spilling the beans right now. Well, you know what? If I were to witness a murder and my description of the perp to the detective was that this guy was a white guy, 6 foot tall, okay, and that later, while being cross-examined in trial, I changed my testimony and said the assailant was 4 foot tall, brown-skinned, and a pygmy. You know, could my testimony be trusted? Do you think inside the jury's, inside of their mind, they wouldn't be mocking me? They wouldn't be scoffing at my testimony? Are you following me? What I mean by scoff? I scoff at the whole very idea of Tartarus. You know, it doesn't make sense to put trust in the accuracy of anyone or anything. That is inconsistent. Yet that's exactly what Christendom has done while reading their various versions of their Bibles. You know, and the word Tartarus is no exception. And you'll understand that word Tartarus and why I look at it this way in just a moment. The very fact that word has only been used once, just one time in the entire New Testament, should bring up a red flag in you, or at least the very least demand some kind of research into the original meaning of that word. And that's what this video is all about. But you know, unfortunately, that's just not the case. The very fact that it's only been used once in the New Testament, it's even though that fact, it's assumed by most of Christendom that Tartarus simply means hell. There, I spilled the beans. It just simply means hell for those who have read that word in their New Testament. And ironically, in Greek mythology, though, it's as close to the actual pagan Latin version of hell as you can get. It actually really is, and I find that ironic. Now, when I say that Tartarus has only been used once in the New Testament, I want to say to most of my viewers here, good luck finding it. Good luck, okay? Because in the most commonly used Bible versions, such as, and I got a list here, the American Standard, Revised Standard, New Revised Standard, King James, New King James, New International Version, the Message, the Amplified, Good News Translation, the New Century Version, you know, whereas every one of those that I just listed, they use the word hell to replace Tartarus. Okay, so for the sake of argument, I'm going to share the verse that it's used in, so you guys can do your own investigation. You know, but for the sake of argument, let's say Peter actually wrote the book of 2 Peter, just for the sake of argument. And as the apostle to the circumcised, which is spoken about Peter in Galatians 2:7, and we know Paul wrote that because he started out by saying, I, Paul, write this, okay? So at least we know Paul wrote Galatians 2:7. But again, let me go back just a bit here. The Apostle Peter was claimed as being the apostle to the circumcised, which were the Jews spoken about, okay, in Galatians 2:7. Did Peter, did he really use the word Tartarus in that verse? Okay. In 2 Peter 2:4, did he really use that? Did he use the word Tartarus, which comes from pagan Greek mythology, while talking to or writing to his Hebrew-speaking brethren? Did he really? You see, not only that, but that word that Peter had never used previously, the word Tartarus, he's never used it previously. Okay? In any other writings beforehand, before that point in time, nor afterwards. Remember when I said at the beginning of this video, that one time it was ever used? You see, man, that should really bring up a red flag in you of how legitimate is this word. Should it have even have been that word? You've got to question these kind of things, okay? You know, I want to take a look into the history of the word Tartarus and what it really represents. But before I get into what is possibly the word that Peter actually used, you know, in that passage, I want to expose even a little bit more inconsistency and irony, all right? Yeah, in the Latin-influenced Bibles, the 2 Peter 2:4 passage reads like this. I'm going to read it. For if God did not spare the angels who sinned, but cast them down to hell and delivered them into chains of darkness to be reserved for judgment. That's how it reads. And most people read their Bibles and they'll go, yeah, that proves that there's hell, and that proves that God is going to put angels in there. Okay? But consider this. That the words hell and Hades have been randomly interchanged in the New Testament. They just have. And the word Hades has replaced Sheol in the Greek Old Testament. Yet Sheol and Hades was never translated as Tartarus in the entire Bible. Or the other way around. They have never been interchanged. Tartarus with Sheol, Tartarus with Hades. Follow my line of thinking here for a minute. However, in the 2 Peter passage, Tartarus has only been translated as hell. Just think about that just for a second. But never as Hades. You ever wonder why and why I consider that totally significant? You know, for those who believe in hell, there's no significance to consider because they deem the word Tartarus as just another way of saying hell. However, for those who don't believe in hell, but endorse Hades as meaning Sheol, then they must be agreeable that Tartarus means Sheol as well, too. Why? Because according to Greek mythology, Tartarus is in Hades. Are you following me? In other words, Tartarus is a subterranean place located in the kingdom of Hades. That is their version of hell. Okay? I hope you're following me here. It's a fact that the ancient translators viewed Scripture through the lens of their pagan beliefs. So keep that in mind. With that in mind, and from their perspective, ironically, the word Tartarus is the only time within all of Scripture where the translators got it right with the usage of hell. From their perspective, I can't emphasize that enough. But in reality, there is no such place as hell, Hades, or Tartarus. So, you know, in doing this video, it just seems so trite and moot to me. It just really does. However, it's anything but trite or moot, you know, to those folks who hold on to a belief in a torturous afterlife. Whew, I'm starting to shiver. I didn't bring a jacket or a coat. Whew. None, you know, everything I've shared so far, you know, none of this explains what that one time only passage in 2 Peter means, does it? I'm about halfway through here. I'm trying to hurry. First, let's read it using the Latin influence version, and then read it in the Amplified Greek rendering to bring some light to its meaning. All right. Now, I've already read it once in the Latin. Excuse me. In the Latin version, but I'm going to do it again. Okay. Here's Latin influenced. For if God did not spare the angels who sinned, but cast them down to hell and delivered them into chains of darkness to be reserved for judgment. Okay, that's what most people are familiar with. However, here it is in the Amplified Greek. For since God did, or does, not spare agents, or folks having a message, but who at one point were or are straying from the goal, or when failing to hit the mark, at missing the target upon committing error, but rather gave or gives them over into an act of judging, of being repeatedly pruned, cut back for correction, while being constantly watched over, ooh, I love this part, and kept, maintained, and protected. Oh boy, giving them the experience of Tartarus. other lower parts of deep waters and abyss, in dark, gloomy pits, caves, caverns, other rope, chains, bands, cords, equaling bondage. Okay? It's hard for me not to jump the gun about what I want to emphasize here. But, context is critical here, folks, because the very next verse is referring to how Noah was spared in his lifetime. As it says, but other agents, folks, having a false message, straying from the goal, failing to hit the mark. Quote, their lives were not spared, those folks. Not in the story of Noah. Okay? But also note, too, that this has nothing to do with the eternal, because their lives weren't spared in the story of Noah. Are you following me? Not their eternity wasn't spared, or their lives through the eternity wasn't spared, but their lives at that point in time was not spared. Okay? And as the story goes, the people that weren't on the ark ended up, where did they end up? In the deep abyss of the waters that flooded the area, or the world, as some people believe. Okay, I just described what the actual word was that was used, that I believe was used in 2 Peter 2:4. The Hebrew word for abyss, or for deep waters, is a Hebrew word, tehom, T-E-H-O-M. Now, according to the Strong's number 8415, tehom literally means the deep or abyss, referring to the great deep of primordial waters of creation in the Bible, or in Genesis, okay? Now, I'm coming to a close here. Now, I'm asking my viewers to reread 2 Peter passage again, and see if you don't come to the same conclusion I did. But you got to reread it in the Greek, not in the Latin horrible translation. To me, it's just simply saying, I'm gonna read it again. Okay, for since God did or does not spare agents or folks having a message. You notice it doesn't say angels here. Okay, but who at one point were or are straying from the goal, or when failing to hit the mark, or missing the target upon committing error. That just simply means sin. But rather gave or gives them over to an act of judging, of being repeatedly pruned, cut back for correction. Not something horrible. We're in God's hands here. It can't be horrible. Okay? While being constantly watched over and kept, maintained, and protected. See, that's the term for deliverance. We're being delivered from all of this stuff. These people that it's referring to is being delivered from it, not handed over to it. I hope you're seeing the difference. Okay? And the most important word here in this whole thing is experience. Because it says, while being constantly watched, kept, maintained, protected, giving them the experience of Tartarus, or the experience of that Hebrew word tehom. All right? And that experience is, this verse is simply using hyperbolic language to describe a process, an experience that somebody would feel going through that. It's not talking about a place. It's talking about an experience. It's very similar to how the infamous lake of fire that you read about is also a process to purify. It's not a place of torment. It's a process, an experience in the presence of God. If you read that lake of fire thing, God is present. It's in His presence. Okay, you're following me. And in closing, so people might ask, actually my friend Kevin, hi Kevin, asked me this. He said, so how did the translators get Tartarus mixed up with tehom anyway in the first place? Well, possibly because, think about this, Tartarus is considered the depth, the deepest parts of Hades. So, maybe, but it would take a complete idiot to get tehom, the deepest parts of an ocean, confused with a literal place that they considered hell. Okay. Well, anyway, I'm too cold to continue. I wanted to do my little infomercial of my book, my new book that's coming up. which I'm going to insert this in here, this Tartarus, a whole chapter on Tartarus, because people are still willing to believe and that Tartarus proves hell, even though it's only been used once, and hell's been used everywhere from 12 times up to 111 times, and yet Tartarus has only been used once. Anyway, I'm going to write about this in my new book, Is God Bipolar? This is going to be, I think, chapter 7. I'm not totally sure, but somewhere right around there. Okay? So look me up on Facebook under a group called the Y Guy Group. It's a private group. I asked 3 questions for you to join. All right? And I'm not the only admin. I answer to people on there. Okay? Admins who, they set me straight when I go off course a little bit. All right? And, well, either in... they haven't set me straight about scriptural issues, but they have set me straight, and non-language issues, but they have set me straight in attitude issues, where I can kind of get hot under the collar because I'm so passionate. They've had to calm me down a few times and said, no, this isn't love, brother. This ain't love. Good stuff, okay? Anyway, and I have an avatar of Jonathan Jones that's open public. Look me up there. Consider subscribing to this channel if you haven't already, and give me a thumbs up, thumbs down, and if you're going to leave a comment, make sure your comment's polite. That's all I ask. Thanks for viewing.